Hello and welcome to In the Envelope, an awards podcast. I am your host, Jack Smart, awards editor at Backstage, the most trusted name in casting. I'm here to spotlight some of the most exciting film, television, and theater awards contenders working today. Who is in the running? What makes an awards-worthy performance? And how can you, my dear listener, win a statue of your own? We're sitting down for intimate, inspirational interviews with actors and artists to get that insider's perspective on these questions and more. It's an opportunity for some of today's most talented stars to share their craft and career advice, and maybe, just maybe, provide a tantalizing glimpse in the envelope.
I think it's like more than perseverance. It's finding ways to, one, facilitate your art, and that does mean all the side jobs, right? And all the side hustles. But in the process, always remembering that who you are in every space is who you're going to be, period. It just is. Like, every space is an opportunity to practice the kind of human being, the kind of artist you're going to be.
I want to ask you where you're from.
I was brought up in London, and then...
Where exactly in London?
South London.
Okay.
Borders of Surrey, which is quite a nice area. But where we were was pretty average area. It's fine. It wasn't like the ghetto. It wasn't like rural residence. And then we moved to the south coast of England.
Right.
Which is pretty, very nice. Not a lot going on.
Sure.
And then I was there until I was 27, and then we moved to America at 27.
Gotcha. At 27, okay.
Yeah. So, what about you?
I'm from Honolulu, Hawaii. I was born and raised there, so I spent the first 18 years of my life there. Very much island living, but also Honolulu is pretty urban, not as urban as New York. But then I went to school in a little bit upstate New York in the Hudson Valley. Then I came to New York City. I've been there for 6 years. I just had to ask because it felt fitting given my interview with DeWanda Wise, which is airing today in today's episode, because it was such a great interview and we tackled a lot, but a lot of it, of what it came, listening to it again, I was reminded of how much we talked about where you're from and how important that is, what it says about you. She talked about being from Maryland. She talked about her kind of roots in New York, where she studied drama. She also studied urban studies, so she actually knows a lot about New York. And that all informed her role as Nola Darling.
Yes.
In the 2017 Netflix series, She's Gotta Have It. She's Gotta Have It it's first of all, it's such a great show. And for anyone who doesn't know that it's based on Spike Lee's film from the 80s, which was kind of a groundbreaking film in its own way. There's not really any film in existence like it, which you could say about a lot of Spike Lee's films. But that was his first feature film. And of course, DeWanda knew of his work, and she went to NYU, and she even talked about a guest lecture that Spike Lee came to, where she like briefly met him with Denzel Washington, actually.
Yeah.
And the way that she got this part where she's going to play Nola Darling, who's already played by another actress, Tracy Camilla-Johns, in the original film, it's a really interesting story. It's not the way that people typically get cast.
Yeah, and I thought, hearing about her history and how she got into acting, I thought that was particularly interesting and different to what we've heard from a lot of other guests on this podcast. Sure, she wasn't necessarily 4 years old watching the TV thinking that's what I want to do when I grow up. This was something that she, she'd come to after trying and failing at maybe a few other things.
Yeah, she called herself like a committophobic kid. She couldn't commit to anything.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to that too.
Sure.
Sure.
And she, like a lot of great actors and a lot of the great actors we've talked to, she put in the work. She put in the training, but she also put in the work of like the side jobs, the side hustles, some of which informed this Nola Darling, this character. Yeah. Because Spike Lee is such a collaborator that he works with his actors, especially like the star of his show, to create the character. He really wanted to make someone modern too, to really update She's Gotta Have It.
Yeah.
The original film is in black and white. This is very much in color. It's very woke in a 2017, 2018 sense. Season 2 is coming. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly when it drops, but DeWanda Wise was also set to star in the Captain Marvel movie, which is the next big Marvel Studios movie, but she had to drop out.
Right.
And as we talked about at the very beginning of this interview, it sucks, but it's also like, what a great problem to have. Like, she had to drop out of her Marvel engagement to be the lead in a TV show. Like, that's and a role that she loves playing. She was drinking tea at the studio, and her tea bag had a little message on it. And she was telling me about it and how that's prophetic or like relevant to her life and her work. And I do think of her as someone like, she was so chill. She was so cool to talk to because she's someone who sees, she's kind of a poet. I didn't say that to her, but I'm saying it to her now because I think of her as someone who sees meanings in places that one wouldn't normally see meanings, or she sees deeper meanings, and she really reads into stuff, and that makes her a very perceptive kind of performer.
I think actors have to have a certain part of that they've developed or have it naturally. They have to have that perception and that sort of sensitivity to things.
We talked a lot about sensitivity. A lot of being in touch with your emotions just means being open and present in the world. And like, if you've seen any one episode of She's Gotta Have It, it's a demonstration of an actress and a character. And I do think, and we talked about this, the line between the two is a little bit blurred. An actress and a character who is very much open to what she's receiving in the world. I
thought that it was really, really interesting to hear her discussing how she works with Spike Lee.
Yes.
And how you talk about collaboration there, how it is very one-to-one. Of course, he has this incredible history and experience and, of course, age that goes along with that. And it would be very easy to be intimidated by that, I think. Yeah. But she didn't strike me as someone who would be intimidated by that at all.
No, I would be so intimidated by working with him. And instead, she approached her auditions with him and her biggest kind of scene. Sometimes he threw last-minute projects at her to film. And she just isn't fazed.
Well, she just say new words.
Oh, yeah.
Because the terminology wasn't quite right.
Yeah. And DeWanda Wise is the kind of person where she doesn't blink. She's ready. And I got that sense from her. She's a formidable person, but also just a warm, just really lovely presence. And you'll hear that in this interview. Let's do it. Let's go to this amazing interview. Hey, if you are an actor or an aspiring actor, someone at the beginning of your artistic career, and you haven't signed up for Backstage yet and you don't know how it works, I have good news for you. Backstage is offering 30 whole days completely free just for our In the Envelope listeners. If you visit backstage.com/subscribe and enter the code ENVELOPE, you will have full access to the site where you can make a profile, upload a headshot, upload a reel, start applying to the thousands of casting notices uploaded every single day on the world's #1 casting platform. Again, we are giving listeners of this podcast 30 days completely free to try out Backstage. Go to checkout, that's backstage.com/subscribe, and enter the code ENVELOPE. If you want to be in contention for an Emmy or for an Oscar or for a Tony or for a SAG award, do as many of the guests on this podcast have suggested and use Backstage. We are here for you. Again, free 30-day trial, backstage.com/subscribe, enter the code ENVELOPE. DeWanda Wise plays Nola Darling in the Netflix hit She's Gotta Have It, adapted for episodic TV by the one and only Spike Lee, whose 1986 film about this sexually woke Brooklynite artist put him on the map as a filmmaker. Originating from Baltimore and trading as an actor at NYU and Atlantic Theater Company, DeWanda is also known for her performances in Shots Fired and Underground. Here it is, our interview with the fabulous DeWanda Wise. How are you today?
I'm excellent.
What did your tea tell you again?
What did what?
Your tea?
It told me what belongs to you shall come to you. And that's only, we were literally just talking about how I can't do Captain Marvel because it conflicts with very
Just
privileged
heard
problem.
this. Yeah.
Very silly conversation.
You got it in
right?
perspective. Yeah.
I mean, I do. And it's also like, presumably, just being very optimistic, right? This is not the first.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not the last like conflict I'll have. It just happens to be a really dramatic first conflict.
Yeah.
But
you're the lead on a TV show.
But I'm the
and
lead
that
of
kinda-
a
that
TV show. You gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. Oh, so this just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is that because you're when is season 2 is filming when now?
Season 2 starts May. I'm working on a indie now. Well, a Netflix indie.
Yes. Okay, cool.
But season 2 starts May 29th, and the conflict was like late June.
Yeah, and Marvel takes up a lot of time.
Yeah, because they'll say it's a couple of, because, retrospect afterwards, everyone was like, yeah, they'll say it's a number of days, and then they'll just
But then they got to put you in training
there.
or whatever.
Yeah, all
could
that.
turn you into a superhero and stuff. You're better off focusing on
I
Nola.
kind of like to do that.
Sure.
Like
sure.
I admire actors who are better at multitasking than I am.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it a little bit with season 1, trying to like jump in between characters.
Yeah, while filming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Sure. For your first big role.
Yeah.
What other roles were those?
I was still finishing Underground.
Oh, Underground.
Geechee Gullah accent, 1800s.
Whoa, yeah. So different. Oh my gosh. Totally.
Yeah, it was wild.
You have such an amazing story. And I can't wait I'm so excited for this. I'm such a huge fan. She's Gotta Have It is, so I was just thinking today how excited I am for season 2, just because it's a story, it's a character that we as audience members want to check in on.
Right.
I'm sure you feel the same way about her.
And I know nothing yet. It's really great.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I mean, I had a kind of preliminary meeting to talk about what I wanted. But I'm super open.
What do you want for the character?
I mean,
or as the character?
There were certain things that I thought were certain themes that resonated with me. I was interested in seeing the development of the female friendships.
Sure.
That spoke to me a lot. And just little nuancy things, like season 2, she's going to be grappling with success.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's very meta.
Yeah, you have things to harness there.
Yeah. Very similar to season 1. I had they were like, what other side hustles could Nola have? And I was like, I have a list.
I've done them all.
I've done them all. Got you.
And that's, you've got your dog walking. You've got your tutoring. I know that as a student at NYU, you did a lot of student films, which isn't necessarily a survival job, but you did a lot. That was like your introduction to film.
I was a teaching artist through CUNY. There was a program at CUNY.
Just like Nola.
Cool. Yeah, for sure.
But what is your relationship with actual art? Not art, just,
visual art.
Visual art, yeah.
I had none. I kid you not. Like the only reason I became an actor, this is horrible. I was accomplished quitter. Like I was a very accomplished quitter of things.
An accomplished quitter.
Yes. Much to my mother's chagrin, because she would invest in things and then I'd be over it really fast.
Oh, I see.
But the only reason I took drama was because I started taking an art class, and when you're training to be a visual artist, it's really, you got to learn the basics, right?
Of course.
So I'm in class and they're like teaching us the basics. We're literally drawing lines. Yeah. And I was like, no, thanks.
It's boring.
Yeah. I was
the basics are boring. Yeah.
The basics are boring.
Sure.
I'm in high school, I was a sophomore, and I was just like, never mind, I'll just do drama. That's what happened.
And I heard there was also like an option of detention or being cast in a play.
Yeah,
which is the Music Man.
It was the Music Man.
But that really turned you on. That really was the inspiration.
I mean, it was so immediate and so clear and so, I don't have to quit this thing because, you work on a project for 2 months and then, or 3 or 4, and then that's it.
Cool. Totally.
You're on to something else.
Yeah.
It's, I consider it the perfect fit, obviously.
It was being bit by the bug. Essentially.
Yeah, for
sure. So was NYU like a logical next step?
It was a logical next step. I actually really wanted to go to Fordham.
Oh, okay.
Because Denzel went to Fordham.
Yes. Yes, and he studied journalism.
And he studied journalism.
Which is interesting.
Ventured into acting. Or like North Carolina School of the Arts, you know, because Jada went there for 2 seconds.
Oh. These are the people you're looking
These were the
up to.
people I was like,
the actors.
oh, okay, yeah.
Sure.
You know, they felt.
But plenty of people went to NYU.
Plenty of people went to NYU. I don't know why it wasn't like, you know, I think I was just like, oh, you know, I latched on to the whole working class background.
Oh, sure.
Jada's from Baltimore.
Yeah.
So she was always such an icon to me. And yeah, it was pretty clear when I got to NYU that it was the place.
And NYU was a good experience for you, right?
The best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because some people get there and they're like, but I'm not acting enough. Or
yes.
This isn't what I envisioned. But you also studied urban studies.
I did.
Which is cool. I feel like that means that you weren't all in on acting.
Yeah, I mean,
able to spread yourself out.
I was able to keep the perspective.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, NYU can be really overwhelming, especially undergrad. It's like 500 kids.
Right.
You know, it's divided up by the studios, which makes it feel a little smaller. But at the end of the day, it's easy to kind of feel lost, I'm sure, in a system like that.
Of course.
But it was such a, I mean, it's, if
and
you
a
take...
that doesn't have a real campus.
Yeah, at all. If you're looking for community,
city.
It's just not,
Yeah.
It's not a thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. You know, and I happen to be a community builder, for sure. Cool. I will always be. It's like in my DNA. So that didn't really intimidate me. And, you know, and I was an RA there.
Oh, cool.
Which required programming and community building.
Yeah.
And I was president of there was a Black artist organization called The Collective. So yeah, I was really engaged, really super early on.
And the student films were part of that?
The student films were just, you know, I love to act. Like while you're training, you're not actually doing it really.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like you're picking up the tools to learn how to do it.
Right.
But like learning how to draw, it can be really slow. Yeah. And so the student films were really my opportunity to continue to practice and do what I actually love to do, which is jump in, you know, in a place to apply the things that I was learning. You know, I just did a guest class
cool.
with my studio. And I ran into my speech teacher afterwards, and she was like, "Did you talk about speech?" And I was like, "I didn't, and I should have because I use it a lot."
How interesting. That must have been so full circle.
Yeah, it was really
especially
beautiful.
As now explain to me, especially as Spike Lee, he came in and taught. Was it your class, or was it like he taught a film class and you were in one of the films?
It was. We used to have kind of larger interdisciplinary guest classes. So it was acting students, film students, writers, kind of like handpicked students. I went to a couple of those. I was a nerd, you know, such a brown noser. So I was always invited to those kind of round tables, and he and Denzel taught one of them.
Oh, Denzel was with him. Oh,
it's amazing.
So you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And so how did you get this part? Because I've heard that it was like a lot of different people in his life recommended you, but all for different projects of yours.
Yeah, all for different projects, none of which, you know, paid me any money. It was great. It's very, very...
That's the dream.
That's
there
the dream.
You go.
That's the dream.
Yeah. It was your work that ended up standing out.
One was an indie by a student, a former student of NYU, Tahir Jeter. And we met working on a short film.
Amazing.
And
you make these friends and
community.
Yes.
Yeah, it's everything. It really is.
It really is. I mean, it even seems like community almost is superior to...
I mean, it became this thing where, you know how they say oh, it's just who you know. I always amend it and I'm like, no, it's who you know who believes in you.
Yeah.
And I think... You know, a lot of young artists get tripped up on trying to network up.
Yeah.
And not really cultivating the people who are right next to them.
Cool.
You know, and thinking...
At their career level, at their talent level. Yeah.
And it's really not even... I was always just seeking out the filmmakers, the writers, the directors who were creating the space to do what I wanted to do, you know? So it feels less of a matter of like networking has a connotation, right?
Absolutely.
You know, it feels like a bit opportunistic.
Yeah. Desperate.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be that, you know? You find the other people who love to make art and you make art with them by any means necessary. And then it continues to grow and expand. And, you know, the next thing you know, you're making an indie together and you go to Sundance.
Right. Totally.
You know? It could be quite beautiful.
Sure. And if that art that you're making at the time is not great or, you know, not at the level that you know, because you have taste, that it's at the level that you want it to be, that's the benefit of working with people at your level because you're just going to keep pushing yourselves up together.
Yes, and you're going to keep growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that desperate, that grasping thing of like, oh, that person's more famous or more well-connected or more, I don't know.
Shiny.
Yeah, and then that networking thing does have kind of a negative connotation.
It does, and it's fine if that is your strength. I admire people. You know, my husband is an extrovert, and he's gregarious, and he can do it in a very organic and like heartfelt, authentic way, you know?
Yeah.
It's not my strong suit.
It's not for me either. No, I'm good once I'm in with a person.
Yes.
It's the initial hello. And then like at an event, at a party or something, I'm just, no, I can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, Spike himself was just like, how have I never met you? And I was like, we have.
Uh-huh.
We have.
How long had it been since you'd met him?
I mean, at that point, probably 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Like I was actually, he threw like, there was this huge cruise, right? Because I was in with 40 Acres. I was like doing random stuff, like small commercials. And, you know, I'd known his AD, Mike Ellis, for years. And he had this like 40 for 40 cruise, I want to say, or 20 for 20. I don't remember. I think it was like 20 years, 20 films. But a huge cruise, like Oprah was on it.
Oh.
And my task was to escort Wesley Snipes and his family around.
That was your job? Your gig?
Yeah, it was my gig.
Okay.
And I did it well. His family's very lovely. Shout out to Wesley Snipes.
How did you get this gig?
I do not remember the first time I ever met anyone through 40 Acres. I really genuinely don't. Like it might have been a backstage thing. It might have been something.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a call.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, okay.
These paths that you can never predict how you're going to get
ever
to where you're going to get.
Yeah.
To lead on a Netflix show. And what do you remember about that not first meeting with Spike, but the first meeting with Spike as Nola, or were you already for sure Nola? Or
No, it was, I had a director session. Really my first impression was that he reminded me of my grandfather.
Oh, wow. Cool.
That was my first impression. You know, Ellis Wise was such a character. Super strong-minded, opinionated, intimidating is, I'm not going to cuss, but like super intimidating. And it's one of those things where if you grow up with someone like that, a personality like that, it was so familial. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I left and I remember like being on the flight going back, I was still filming Underground. And being like, oh, that was supposed to be like intimidating, you know? Because Spike is a tester.
Interesting.
He's naturally mischievous. And also, you know, Nola's a true number one. And it is grueling. It is grueling. And so part of his process for my director session was kind of like almost a test of character strength.
Of your own. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, you know, when I got to set, he's super gentle with actors.
Okay.
Super kind, super generous. He will not he'll like pitch a bitch to anyone else. He will literally go and yell in a van if he's frustrated, but he will not yell at his actors.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But in the audition process, he tends to be a little more challenging, and it's not just because he's mischievous, it's because he really wants to put you
He really wants to put you up.
Yeah.
Yep, under the fire a little bit.
So what was that? What were those
He just
tasks?
called cut like 18 times. It was ridiculous. Like every time I would just like start up and, you know, it'd be for the direct address monologue to camera.
The very first one?
Very first one. And he would just keep calling cut, you know. Anytime I would look away, he would call cut.
Whoa. To throw you off, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just,
Look at you. You're
it
like,
was amusing.
It didn't faze me.
I was like, that's fine. Tell me how to fix it.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not like, oh God.
No,
oh, no.
I was like, what do you want? And then I didn't have all the sides for my read. And he was like, let's do this, next thing. And I was like, can't do it. I don't have it.
I didn't have that. And that was that?
Yeah. I was like, oh.
So not only were you not intimidated, you were like actively not intimidated.
I was like, it's
You were
fine.
intimidating.
I was probably intimidating.
Okay, so to really get into it here, I am intimidated by Spike Lee too. Mm-hmm. And I studied his films in high school, and I did revisit She's Gotta Have It before I started watching this show.
Nice.
Which I don't know if you recommend people doing that right before they start the show. Because it's very much its own thing, but I loved seeing the overlap between the performances, especially in the first episode, where there seems to be more overlap.
Yep.
And even in your mannerisms, which is so cool.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
I really thought it was only in the first episode, and then because the show is evolving the character, you then evolved the character too.
Right, yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. I think that's one of the little special nuggets of watching the film and then watching the series is there are some scenes that are verbatim.
Yeah.
There's there are pieces of the monologues that are verbatim. And it's
how genius.
Really fun.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it just shows what I've said from Inception, which is the film was so ahead of its time.
Exactly.
It just really was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that even now this adaptation of that film is still considered, I don't know, progressive, I don't know, racy.
Right, racy, edgy.
There's a lot of sex, there's some nudity, although not as much nudity as, we can get to that later.
Thank you, by the way, because whenever people were like, it's so much,
it's a sex show.
I was like, is it?
The film almost had more, I don't know.
I guess because it's an hour and a half versus
show.
It's very sex positive show. Yeah.
But Spike Lee intimidates me because he's brilliant and because he's very idiosyncratic. It's very much his own thing. He has his vision.
Yeah.
And I do want to get into how much of this iteration of Nola was yours. But help me understand as a white boy from Honolulu, as a gay white boy from Honolulu, Hawaii, and this art. What is this for? Black people and white people? Is it for Black women? Is it for men and women? What is it? Who is the audience for the show?
That's a great question. I mean, I think, Spike's interesting, and we share this in common. And we're just super open and receptive, And I've always believed that my work has always been for the people that it's for. Period.
Okay.
And your kindreds come in all shapes and sizes, right? All backgrounds.
Yes.
I believe that from the fullness of my heart. I was on the train the other day with my husband, and I really need better sunglasses. But, they said these women came up to me and they're French. We have a huge following in France.
Really?
In Brazil. Yeah. Because you think sex positive. What do you think?
True. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
Netflix.
Yeah.
It's global. So I think it's very, I take pride in representing for Black women, period.
Yeah.
I take pride in making sure that my work is specific and nuanced and, showing the kind of scope and breadth of who we are and who we can be. But by virtue of that kind of specificity, it creates a universal, this sense of universality, right?
Sure.
Nola's for artists. Nola's for people who don't subscribe to labels. Nola is for people who are still figuring shit out.
Yes.
Yeah. Nola's for the hustlers. Nola's for the dreamers. This director I worked with described her as like a little sexy Mary Tyler Moore. She's just going through her journey.
Yeah, her own path.
Her own path and trying to retain and maintain her joy and sense of self in the process. So I've continue to allow myself to just be surprised by who receives her.
I love that. And I think that's almost my experience as an audience member of like, it is about continuing to let yourself be surprised by what resonates with you and what connects with you in that universe. That idea of like the hustler aspect and the not knowing what you're doing in your 20s aspect, of course those resonate with me.
Yeah.
The Brooklyn part.
Yes.
I've been living in Brooklyn for 6 years in Crown Heights, which is not far from Fort Greene.
Right.
And even in 6 years, I have seen it change.
Yeah, drastically.
So a show where Brooklyn is really, would you agree, it's a character
Oh, yes,
in the show.
absolutely.
That is really interesting to see, too, especially considering the film versus the TV show.
Like, you see that, there's that one Nola's birthday in the park, and there's a dancer
color
next to that monument, and no one's there, and now you go to Fort Greene Park. It's Fort Greene Park. Like, and those simple nods to that, making her a dog walker. So many dogs in the park.
And her white neighbor who's, got questions. She's not maybe as woke as the rest of her,
right?
The original crew.
You know what? One of my favorite things about our update, there's an actress, her name's Elise Hudson. She plays my upstairs neighbor. And originally that role was just supposed to be like the white girl in African dance class who's really good.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And Spike will do this. He'll just be like, come back next week.
Okay.
And so her role grew so much.
Interesting. Okay.
And it was like, Nola will have white friends. Like, it
Absolutely.
is 2016. Like,
totally.
Maybe we should expand this.
There you go.
That's one of my favorite things about Spike.
How much is he rewriting or handing you new pages right before you're on set?
It's more like, there'll be things that I contribute, like an update, a dialogue update. Like a
You're
slang
thing,
hip
to the times.
Yeah. So I'll do that, and he'll just walk up and be like, "What'd you say?"
That's a good Spike Lee. Yeah.
He'll be like, "What'd you say?" And I'll repeat it, and then he'll be like, "I'll be like, it means the same thing." And he'll be like,
"It means the same thing, but it's yeah,
it's now."
Yeah.
So those things, and he would throw more. Like, he loves specificity, right? So if you're using a reference, he gets really excited and he'll expand on the references, So eventually, it didn't take me long to start just anticipating those things.
Cool. Okay.
And to just do it myself.
Yeah.
Before I got to work.
Interesting.
And other than that, there were plenty of things. Mostly it was like, non-dialogue based stuff he would just add. And we would have, and he would leave it up to the editors to find a placement for
interesting. It. His relationship with his editors is super interesting.
Yeah.
And there are scenes that really stand out because they're so strange in a way sometimes. Like this one take of you spinning in a chair.
Added. Completely added.
Like last minute?
Completely
What did he
added.
tell you right before it started?
He said, this is what we're going to do. He said, we're going to play this.
Did he have like a vision? Like
I think
it's
he's
like his playground and
it's his playground.
Yeah.
He's 5 years old. He's an artist.
Totally.
He really is.
And
he
you're
was
on
like,
board because you're open to, yep. And you're going to do one take and you're going to cry your eyes out. And
that is exactly what people
not?
are like, how many times did you do that? I'm like, once.
Yeah. Well, it was just one of those things where like, again, it's the moment of like, is this for me? Like, what am I taking from this? Doesn't matter. You just let go and you experience it.
Yeah, you do.
Whatever
It's
it
a
means
lot of
to you is
trust.
what it means to you. Trust.
And it meant so much. Both in character, I remember that shooting that day, both in character and out of character. It was like we had filmed enough at that point for Nola's journey to have resonated in a very visceral way. And I was just, you look at my continuity photos from the series and I was exhausted. It was winter. Winter's really hard for me.
Same.
Ooh, winter's so hard for me.
Here on the first nice day.
Yes. Yes. I'm like, let's go for a run. But, so I just remember it just being this kind of confluence of my actual exhaustion and gratitude and the journey so far and just everything. It was like this, exactly the hodgepodge of words that was coming out from,
cool.
And there was, it was one of those moments where you kind of get lost in the overlap of the art and the artist. Acting nirvana.
Which is why it's kind of trippy talking to you, because it feels like, of course I'm talking to you, but I kind of feel like I'm talking to Nola in a way because of this gorgeous gray area between the two of you.
For sure.
And you can sense that in scenes like that. Or in scenes like when she goes to the graveyard.
Right. Also added.
Which, like super last minute again.
Also added.
I didn't know that one graveyard had all those artists, James Baldwin and Miles Davis. And
There's multiple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, definitely multiple graveyards.
I'm so confused about that.
Definitely some, like we had access to some sites and not others. So some of them are real. Like the monuments, you can't fake that. Like the ones that are, standing upright are all real. But some of the ones that are like on the ground are not. Don't ask me which, because I do not remember.
Right. No, of course. And it felt like that was part of it, was that it was spontaneous.
It was super spontaneous, yeah. And it was because
you were on the playground.
On the playground, and I mean, Spike is 61, 62 now. Prince had just passed.
Yes. Oh, I want to ask about that scene too. The dancing.
I think that's why there was so much kind of thread and added. Like Nola's favorite color was always purple.
Always. And
her favorite album was always that Prince album. But throughout the series, there was just like more kind of woven in into the tapestry, because Spike lost his friend. Yeah. He lost his friend.
Yeah.
And that was kind of that moment was an overlap for him, right? It's like everyone deserves to use their art to process whatever they want to process. And I was like, yeah, okay. I'll lay down on Basquiat's grave. Cool. Cool.
Right. And it seems like he is using his art to process, and he is using it as his set as a playground. Yep. But it's a process that he is very much a collaborator, where he's using other people's strengths. Yeah. And he seems to do that very, very well.
For sure.
And I know that for the TV show, as opposed to for the film, he was intent on making sure that he had female writers in the writer's room.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like incorporating your vision into who she might be.
Yeah.
What does the nose ring have to do with her?
I had just gotten this nose ring.
She wears it only sometimes.
Only during very personal and intimate moments. Like I've considered her relationship with her sexuality to be inherently spiritual. There's a huge ritual involved. Yep. The candles
has to be on the bed.
Has to be on her bed. And so it was just like a little, it was really funny too, because Marcy, our costume designer, I remember I came to my first fitting and she was like, Spike hates nose rings. Like, he does not like septum piercings. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I auditioned with mine, so.
Again.
Yeah.
You and your confidence in this audition.
I was
insane.
Like, I mean, he hasn't said anything to me, so.
It's very nonchalant, very just like.
I was like, there's something in me that's just like, the rules don't apply to me. I don't know. It's probably from my mom. Just like, it's fine. We'll see what happens,
And he reminds you of your grandfather.
He does.
Which is helpful, I guess.
Yeah.
Or weird sometimes.
I mean, everyone calls him Uncle Spike, so I'm not the only one who, feels super familial.
Yeah.
But it's definitely that thing where, it's funny where you meet your kindreds and super unexpected,
Yeah, and it sounds like in the however many months of filming, how long was the filming?
Season 1 was 4 months.
Okay, yeah. And you're saying that because of the progression of the seasons, but also just like you yourself, by the end of it, you've changed, but your relationship with him has changed and has strengthened.
Yeah.
And his relationship with the world is changing too. Where did the election fall into that?
That was added, obviously.
Because it was so soon right before the series dropped, but there was a full intro. It was the most stunning intro.
We were filming then.
Yeah.
And he picked up, those were pickups, because we filmed 12 hours a day max, basically. It was like 6 to 6, Monday through Friday. And he and I both work very efficiently. His crew is kind of this combination of like his vets and very young filmmakers, which I love because you see him teaching on set. And so we had time. Like, that's why there were so many additional things. The grave thing was additional, the spin moment, and the election thing. He would just kind of pick up whenever those actors were working. So, yeah, he had everyone kind of respond in character.
Yeah, and sometimes they're speaking, and sometimes they're just staring into the distance.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a walk, and sometimes it's lighting a candle. And it was the most wonderful, like, fictive adaptation of a response to the election I've seen.
Right.
And it helped me process in a way.
I mean, we were filmed the day after.
Yeah.
We were filming, there's this dance scene or like a party scene in our Love is Love episode. And my co-star and I, you know, the guy, he plays one of my best friends, and he's like, never came out to his parents in the story, even though they're like, yeah, we know you're gay, it's fine, you know?
Totally.
But we were just, I mean, we spent the morning before we started shooting just sobbing. And that was one of those days where you were just like, oh my goodness, thank God I'm required to party today. Like, you know, sometimes you need to lean into it, right? And it's cathartic.
Sure.
And you're like, yes, I just need to cry it out. And sometimes you just got to go the entirely different direction and be forced to be, you know, full of joy.
And to be someone else.
And yeah, it was such a, like, I don't know. There's no words. There's no words to describe it.
I do feel like for actors, for those of you whose job is to be emotionally sensitive and intelligent and so in touch with your emotions that you need a full morning of sobbing.
Yeah.
Whereas the rest of us maybe don't get to or don't have to or something.
Right.
There is something really interesting about like grief, which in the wake of the election, this podcast, by the way, is so liberal at this point. Like I assume I don't have any Trump supporter listeners because
how could it not be?
They're all just like, if you're a Trump supporter and you're listening, how are you still listening to this show? It's gotten like, so political. Oh well. But I do feel like you, in this, especially in this, you know, emotional, sensitive role, I can imagine that you process grief in a more self-aware way, maybe. Like you can pinpoint the ups and downs of loss.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what it evolves to and becomes.
We always ask for the acting advice stuff. The like, what is your, you know, advice for handling a big break?
Right.
For being number one on a call sheet. Do you feel like you kind of set the tone on set in a way?
2,000,000,000%.
Yeah. You're a leader.
Yeah. And it's something that you don't think about until you see it, right? Like my husband he's guest starred on enough like pilots and shows, and I'm always around, right? I'm such a creep. So I was always around. And at one point, I will not name the shows, but he was like working on 2 new shows at once. And when I tell you the tones bouncing between sets were so different. I mean, one, you could cut the air with a knife, right? It was like, and I just remember even in the wake of, you know, Me Too and Time's Up.
Yeah.
All I kept thinking was, thank God for a non-toxic work environment. Like, wow. Some of the stories that were coming out, I was just like, I just could not even imagine trying to do what I do, being that open and vulnerable and literally naked.
Right. With all this weird tension.
With all of that. And so, no yeah, 1,000,000,000%. And it's so funny. You know, I joke about it. Like I said, Spike is really super duper generous. Like, I have an assistant when I go back to work, you know?
Oh, that he's given you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I was joking about it. Her name's Tia. She's the best. Nobody try to steal her. But she, we were joking about it because, like, you know, I got everybody like a taco truck one day, you know, like the kind of like midway morale thing. Guys, a taco truck goes a long way.
It buys you a lot of brownie points.
People love tacos. Like Taco Tuesday is a vibe.
You did every week?
No, just like once, and then like a wrap present.
Yeah.
But it was just like
Gotcha.
so simple. It was like, be nice.
Yeah.
Get a little token.
Something delicious.
Something delicious.
Like, it's not a huge burden for you.
It's not, it's not. And I mean, definitely it's interesting walking into, because I absolutely had ideas of fame, ideas of being number one, that were not necessarily like favorable.
Okay.
At all. I was like, no thanks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's really not that deep,
What's
like,
not deep?
Any of it. Like someone asks you to take a picture, like, take a picture right quick. Like,
yeah.
It's like, okay.
It's not a big deal.
Not anymore. I mean, maybe, because we're also in this moment where it takes more time and effort to like really be a thing. It does.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Like
there's
10 years ago,
there.
there's a ton of TV.
Yeah. On Netflix alone.
On Netflix alone.
Yeah.
And if you are a person who is a little more of an introvert and values like a level of autonomy, it's great. It's fantastic.
The slow ascent to
fame. The slow ascent
is
kind of great.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so your relationship with fame, but it must be changing.
It's changing. It's evolving. Yeah. For sure.
But you're saying you don't necessarily want to be at the level of like a Oprah or a George Clooney or a
I mean, it can be really confining, right? Because then, like right now, I'm enjoying this moment because I still have so much leeway. I'm still in this position where people they haven't boxed me yet, right?
Yeah, cool.
So I can bounce, I can like go ahead and do like straight up comedy, which I'm working on now. And then ideally soon I'll do something like completely different.
Gotcha.
And, there's no one to say like, you can't do that because this is who you are.
Right. How interesting. Because I've always thought that it's so easy to put people in a type and to box them into one thing, but it's actually only when they do it in a project that's huge.
Correct.
Or several.
Correct.
And but part of it too is that Nola is just a three-dimensional, nuanced person, and you're giving that performance.
And that,
there's no other Nola out there, so it's not like, well, her box is Nola.
Exactly. Exactly, yeah. And that was also the driving force, because being the anti-committal person I am, chronic quitter, I was like, I could play Nola for multiple seasons. She is full enough and vast and evolving enough, that I wouldn't feel bored or compromised or,
It's certainly going to keep challenging you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
For sure.
And you don't even know what to expect from season 2, but it's going
No idea. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
I know it's in the summer. And that's going to be amazing.
That is nice. Wait, so you're based in LA?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Primarily.
Is that because of the weather?
It is.
Okay.
It really is. People were like, did you move for your career? And I'm like, I got cold.
Because I might need to do the same.
I live in Pasadena. I'll see you there.
But you like LA?
I do a lot.
But you liked New York too, like you liked NYU.
I did.
And the urban studies, I don't know where that plays into all this.
I've always been, I'm from Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
And I know that where you're from means a lot.
Oh, yeah.
It just does, and it means a lot for character. And to be honest, to be really real, urban studies was kind of like, I discovered that, at NYU, when your primary is drama or art, their requirements are like, it's not like a normal BFA where they'll have like, you have to take a hard science, like a chemistry or something like that. You could take a social science. So all the classes I was interested in taking just happened to be in urban studies. It was like urban environmentalism, urban schools in crisis. There was an architecture, you know what I mean?
Cool.
And so it just happened to be, it really did just happen to kind of work out that all my interests were in this one
like major
umbrella. Yeah. And again, I'm just a girl from B-more. So I was like, I get a 2-for-1?
2-for-1 degree.
I was like, what? Let me do that.
Because you're all about efficiency.
I am.
And then what was the relationship with, how well did you know Brooklyn? or Fort Greene specifically?
Well.
Oh, okay.
Super duper well.
Had you lived there?
I lived in Bushwick.
Oh, okay.
After I graduated for quite a while.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was a part of the study. Like when you're studying the history of New York, Brooklyn's the first borough. That's where it all began.
It's a lot of history.
It's a lot of history. Yeah. So, a lot. And even before we began too, Spike had us watch this amazing documentary, because he's a natural documentarian, right? Called Brooklyn Boheme. Which will make you really sad. Like it's beautiful because you're just like, oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But then,
that sense of lost history and culture.
Yeah. That sense of like,
it's a complicated feeling.
It is a complicated feeling because you're like, I love this Whole Foods, but also like,
totally,
you're driving artists out, and arts, artists is culture, and
or changing one type of art for a different kind of art.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't help but feel like I'm part of that problem.
I am too.
Okay.
It's really, I came back. I'm living in Williamsburg now.
Oh,
in like a high rise.
Which Williamsburg resembles Manhattan now.
Yes.
That's where everything is changing.
For sure.
Yeah.
My husband and I were like walking up, I guess it's Wythe. I don't remember what block it was. But now all the murals, right, where once you would have seen like graffiti, like informal graffiti, have been appropriated.
It's all ads. It's ads.
And they're all from this one company.
Oh, really?
Yes.
They're all like really well done. They're all like very
all
vivid.
Glossy. Yes. It's surreal.
Yeah.
It's surreal.
I used to bike along that every day over the summers, and they would change all the time. I didn't know they were one company.
It's one company.
But it was at one day I was kind of like, they're all ads. They're not.
Yeah, you're
art,
looking at it and you're like, oh, that's so cool. And then you're like, oh, you're selling
really
me something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it not art, I guess, but like.
I know. It's just that, it's that murky.
Or that, yeah. Bummer.
Yeah.
But that's the thing about She's Gotta Have It, the series, is that even in the intro you see his beautiful like intercutting of old photos and new.
From his brother David.
Oh, is the photographer?
Yep.
Of both?
Of both, yeah. He's still our still photographer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Because it's almost hard to put into words how he must feel about it. Like it's almost like he's portraying it in a way that's joyful, but very bittersweet.
Super bittersweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he feels the same way about like, it's great to have Whole Foods. It's great to have nice food.
But like, shouldn't everybody have it?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a bummer. I don't know what I can do about it. Other than continue to like explore the art and culture.
Honestly, I really don't know what any of us can do about it other than like continue to be conscientious and aware and sensitive, because I just remember I've had conversations about Washington Heights, for example, which is like a direct line to the culture of the Dominican Republic. It's literally like little DR.
Sure.
And, the way in which we talk about a community, the way in which we engage with it, if it's outside of our like realm of understanding, it's just like, maybe think before you speak, right? Like if someone's like blasting music, it's so great. I was walking down the street the other day and these guys were like outside that Apple store or whatever. Just blasting the most ratchet, wonderful, hood, ridiculous song ever. And it was like, it almost mimicked a block party. Like immediately I just thought like, block parties.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's having that kind of awareness, if your go-to is like, oh, noise pollution, or like, I feel, like my personal space is being infringed upon.
Yeah, my space. Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally.
Just
it's a territorial thing.
Have another option available to you.
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath. Yeah.
And just, it's kindness. It comes back to the kindness thing.
Always.
Because it does feel like something, the New Yorkness is diminished if you have fewer block parties. If the block parties disappear, what does that leave? Us all, right. Or something? We're all just becoming drones on the subway, which I already feel like we're doing.
I know.
I already feel like that's my life. Wow, so much New York stuff. Okay, I want to get to.
Okay.
We're backstage. I need your acting advice first.
Right.
First of all, What do you, what's your advice for someone who's maybe they're at NYU and they're doing student films, or they're doing the commercials and the odd jobs and the hustle, other than like perseverance?
I mean, I think it's like more than perseverance. It's finding ways to, one, facilitate your art. And that does mean all the side jobs, right? And all the side hustles. But in the process, always remembering that who you are in every space is who you're going to be, period. It just is. Like, every space is an opportunity to practice the kind of human being, the kind of artist you're going to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and by practicing the person who you're going to be, you are that person in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because if you, like, once you break, once you're like in it, like in the system.
Sure.
In the system.
Yeah.
What's going to keep you there is your character and your kindness. And it's without fail. If you're ever watching a performance or you see these actors who were like work a lot and you don't think they're that great, they're probably the best human being ever. I assure you.
Right.
And I've seen plenty of actors kind of fall by the wayside because they lack gratitude. Because, they complicate. I never call anyone difficult. I think we're all, full human beings, but they complicate things for themselves. So really, so much of my advice has little to do with acting. I mean, get good. Sure. Like, continue to practice
the basics. Like you said.
Yeah, continue to do that. But, I always think like, what keeps me going. And I think so much of the traits that help me thrive are discipline, learning when I don't love something, an element about either the industry or what it takes to continue to build the art, including like PR. I find a way to learn to love it. I just find my in. And then if it's something that doesn't fit on your skin, right, that doesn't rock with you, then don't do it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Then don't do it.
That's great advice. Yeah.
Because I even with the students that I met with at Atlantic, they were super caught up in type, which I think is a notion that hopefully there are many artists who are starting to dismantle that.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting idea. Yeah.
In the last couple of years, when it was like, you think of Steve Buscemi, leading a show, or the kind of what used to be considered atypical leads. Like, 10 years ago, I would not have been a lead. In New York, I was a character actor all day.
Yeah.
No contest. Yeah. A supporting character actor, and that's shifted. And so I just feel like, don't count yourself out before you're even in it.
And that can happen if you get kind of too caught up in type.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Too caught up in type, too caught up in the statistics of it,
Yeah.
There's a healthy dose of, I feel like I've benefited from having a very healthy dose of naivety. And not knowing.
Interesting.
There's like a lot of actors that know a lot.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
They know a lot of they know the names of actors and projects and directors and
casting directors.
And I was almost on like a need to know basis. Like if I had a callback, then I'd be like, I better watch this movie because I don't know who these people are at all.
Right. And nothing more. Okay. Yeah. That's almost good advice too, to be like, yeah, you got to learn everything you need to know, but maybe don't go beyond that because you could very easily get in your head.
Yeah, it becomes this rabbit hole, and then like the rest of your entire life where you draw your art from is neglected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm interested in this idea of like, if you're teaching yourself how to essentially see the joy in things. Like if there's a part, that thing about if you don't like a certain aspect of it, is it a matter of like tricking yourself into liking it, or?
I mean, I think it's a point of view. It's like, it's about retraining your mind, honestly. You know, human beings, which takes discipline.
Yeah.
Like human beings have a natural like proclivity, tendency to go towards like the negative.
Yeah.
And I feel like not just to, you know, you can obviously, anyone can make it with any point of view, right? You can arrive to a place of success, whether you consider yourself a pessimist or an optimist, but you will enjoy it more if you're an optimist.
So why not choose optimism?
So why not choose optimism?
Sure.
Because when I tell you there's nothing more heartbreaking than having like co-stars who have made it in this relatively impossible space, and they're just like not present and not enjoying it. It's heartbreaking.
Sure.
And I just remember every step of the way, you know, coming out of school, even in school, learning to love auditioning, learning to not allow it to be this, you know, monster where I felt like my fate was in the hands of someone else, turning it into this really empowering moment where I was like, this is my iteration of this story and this character, and almost like adding an element of defiance in it, you know? Because even now I will audition and I feel like if this is not how you want this character to be, then I'm not interested.
Right. I only want to play the thing that I'm here to, I'm here doing this in this audition. So
absolutely
interesting,
you know, and it kind of takes the notion of like, what's for you is for you, and like adding a little fire to it.
Yeah.
And every step, you know, from taking headshots, if you hate taking headshots and it's like just not like a thing that you are naturally into, just continuing to do it and practice, and like, you know, especially in the age of Instagram, right? I could not imagine getting out of school right now.
Exactly.
Just getting better, you know?
Yeah, and training yourself to have that mindset, which does take work and discipline.
And there's an art to the business of it. I think a lot of artists really are, you know, think of like artistry as this thing that's really pure, right? But there's an art to casting. Like, I love great casting.
Oh yeah.
I love great casting, and I can almost foresee things. Like, I can tell now, I can read a script and say like, oh, you know who would be great?
Oh, cool.
Like, this would be good for this person.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make me, it doesn't lessen my talent. It just means like when something's great and specific, then it's great and specific, and, you know, it may or may not be meant for you.
Yeah. I've never heard it put quite that way in terms of like changing the audition into, here's my take on this character, and if you don't like it, it's not, oh, fuck you if you don't like it. It's more just like, I am only interested in playing it if
this
it's
is what
me.
resonates
I'm bringing
with
it to me. And what parts of the character resonate with me. I'm going to bring those, obviously, to this audition.
Absolutely.
Because you're not walking into the audition doing some like, you're not being inauthentic. You're trying to just bring yourself to it in an honest, but also in an interesting way.
Right.
If it's neither honest nor interesting, you don't want the part.
Then you don't want the part.
Yeah.
You know?
And you can walk away when they say no, or if they say no.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, you bring it, you do it, you give it everything. And it's so satisfying. I mean, I just, you know, I love that feeling. I love walking out feeling like I dropped the mic and I did everything that I wanted to do.
Yeah, cool.
You know?
I love it.
Yeah.
That's excellent advice.
Thanks.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. Last question.
Yes.
What's the next steps? What are the dreams? What are the goals? I love this idea that you're not climbing to the A-list just yet. You're taking your time.
Yeah.
You're wary of fame,
it's a trap, guys. It's a trap.
It definitely is. If you're getting into it for the fame, that's not a thing.
Yeah, it's not a thing. No. Not anymore. You know, everyone talked about like, they were like, oh, is it the death of the movie star? I'm like, good riddance.
Totally. Look at you in a Netflix show, just like, bye. I love it. I agree.
I mean, it's just, you know, who did it work out for? What's next? I'm super open, you know, and as I mentioned before, super intuitive. So I can read a project and say, like, this isn't for me.
Right.
And I will say that I think it's insane that I have not played a supernatural creature yet.
Ooh,
so I really want to do that.
Cool,
I'm like,
cool.
what's the last time, like, when's the last movie you've seen about, like, witches? So I want to play a witch or a werewolf.
I mean, witches
or
are
a
so
vampire.
cool. Yes.
That'd be great.
Yes, I could see you as like a mermaid, like a witchy, warlocky mermaid, or like a...
Give me Ursula, yes.
Yes, totally. Your eyes are crazy.
Yeah, they're crazy.
You should be playing a vampire.
Thank you. How has this not happened yet?
You're on top of the world. I'm so excited that we got to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. In the Envelope, an awards podcast, is recorded at Lotus Productions, Hyperbolic Audio, and Big Yellow Duck in New York City, and Soundbox LA, Mark Grouse Studios, and Buzzies in Los Angeles. Like, rate, subscribe, tell your friends, and follow us on Twitter at In the Envelope. Thanks as always to producer, editor, and all-around podcast extraordinaire Jamie Muffett, and thank you to the team at Backstage, the most trusted name in casting. That's Peter Rappaport, Rawaan Alkhatib, Francis Ramos, Caitlin Watkins, Lauren Routt, Mark Stinson, and especially Kasey Howe. For more awards and industry coverage, head over to Backstage.com. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another glimpse in the Envelope.